Well, I'm glad you were able to get that fixed up, and I'm glad we're able to talk today about this amazing new album to finish off this trilogy with Return to Hemmersmoor. I think it's just an amazing album. I mean, it was great to be able to talk last time about the previous album, and now just seeing how everything's coming together here. I just really love where you guys are at right now.
Well, thanks. I really appreciate it. We actually wrote and recorded the whole album during, it started a little bit before the pandemic, and then it continued through the pandemic. So it was a very interesting time to write and record a record. So we're very happy with how it's being received. We put our all into it, just as we've done with the others, but we're actually starting to mesh a little bit more tightly as a unit, because when we first started, it was more like a recording project, and it morphed into a band. And, it takes time. It's like having, 5 different marriages in one. So it's a little tough, especially when you're dealing with people in different parts of the world. So it was, it was a growing period, and we're starting to really sink in with where we evolved to.
Oh, and that's just so great to hear that too. I mean, when you really get that feeling of knowing that it's going from a project to a full-on band, and you just get that appreciation knowing that everyone is just like fully intact with the band, and you're able to take a terrible year like 2020 and just having this pandemic taking over the entire world and just messing with everybody, and being able to put out what might be the strongest album that you guys have done to date. And of course it releases tomorrow. I mean, it's just perfect for Halloween time. I mean, it's just awesome to see that you were able to take a lot of negatives from 2020 and just make the absolute most positive out of it.
Yeah, we really tried hard with that. I think what the most interesting aspect of this whole thing, of this whole time period, was for me personally, having to actually sneak into a recording studio at different times during the day, because us being in New York, me being in New York, I actually was able to work with someone local, actually the producer for the last 5 Suffocation records, Joe Sincata, and he actually has a studio about 15 minutes from my house. So I would sneak in to a rear entrance, go through like this, through various corridors to get to his studio, just to not be in contact with him our whole session. And it was very difficult and difficult process where, each time I had to clean everything, and it was difficult. And I was the only one going there, but he could tell me, oh, nobody else is coming into the studio, but I still had to go through my little cleanings and just make sure, because I have a family at home, and I just had to make sure that I was doing whatever I could do to try to be safe. And it was a really trying time, but we captured some magic, at least vocally, on Return to Hemmersmoor. And musically, everybody, they recorded in different areas. And before the pandemic, the drums were recorded in Colorado, and I was actually there for that process. And it was just a very special process. But you know what? You get roadblocks. Some are smaller and some are larger than others. We just have to deal with that, and we don't crumble up and, blow away or crawl under a rock. We face whatever the situation is, and we just try to make it work. And the funny thing is, them from the very beginning, like you said, it was a project, but it was almost programmed as a pandemic-proof band, because we've operated in this fashion, minus the sneaking into a studio. We've operated in this fashion for 2 other records, so this is nothing for us. We all record in different places, and then the project goes back to the main producer, back to Colorado, and I would fly out there with another band member, and we would finalize the project out there. Things were done a little bit differently, but all in all, the basic structure of how the recording process took place was pretty much the same, minus the me sneaking. And nobody else had to sneak in. I had to sneak in the studio every session I had to do. It's funny.
Oh, yeah. I think that would actually be a pretty cool idea for a music video, too, where, it's like you have to, sneak into the recording studio to be able to sing your parts for a music video. I've just been imagining that as you've been talking. I think that'd be a cool idea.
Yeah, it would be. maybe we should do another video and incorporate that concept. That would be cool.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, and like I was saying before, the fact that this is releasing actually just in a few hours now, and just in time for the Halloween season, and being able to really finish off this trilogy in such a strong way. I mean, I really love where you guys have come with this, and just like you mentioned before, with the drums being done before the pandemic, it feels like everything in this band just feels so strong because of the production. Like, everything is just so crisp and clear, and you can hear how everyone shines on this album.
Yeah, the production is definitely, in my opinion at least, is stellar. That's the full production was orchestrated by Dave Otero from Flatline Audio in Colorado, and he also recorded the drum tracks as well for this record. Previous records we recorded the drum tracks in New York, but this time he wanted the whole band out there, but it's geographically it's a challenge because 3 of the members are in Germany, and the budget didn't really allow for us to do it the way Dave Otero would like to have done it. Me personally, if money wasn't an object, fly everybody over and, we do what we have to do, but we're not at that stage yet. But again, we don't have to do that. We've done it this way, and we've gotten stronger doing it the way we do it. Maybe recording together, it won't come out as good. I don't know. It's hard to say at this point because we're just so used to doing it this way. And, moving forward, who knows how it's going to be done, but, a lot of more bands are recording, remotely. It's amazing. And there's actually technology. Now we could be in a studio in New York, and the producer could be in Colorado, and he could record us. So we don't even have to go to his studio. He could record us in the studio where we are, and he could control everything from Colorado. That's like the latest technology. It's just mind-boggling what technology, with technology, what we can do these days. Phenomenal. I mean, the mixing of the record, I said previously, I would fly with a band member to Colorado and sit there for like 3 days, and 3 days, and go through the mix and fine tune and tweak. Well, not this time. This time, the latest technology, which has been fully incorporated into Dave Otero's setup, which was to literally, while he's mixing and mastering live, I would have a stream, high quality stream. And in some instances, I had to have a bounce down track to hear, like, let's say, I think something might be missing. And I always play it on like 3 different stereo sources when I have a mastered Ixdown mastered copy of a song. But other than that, other than 2 or 3 times, most of the record, it was not a problem listening to it in this fashion through a stream with headphones. It was mind-boggling. Like, we're sitting here doing this. It's one day you won't even have to go to a studio. You could, just hire an engineer or producer, and everybody works remotely. It will get to that point at some day.
Oh, I totally see it happening too. And the fact that you were able to take advantage of that, with the band being international, and just having it come out the way that it did too. I mean, everything just sounds so flawless, from the production, the mixing, the mastering on it. I mean, if I did not know all of this, and this was different times in 2020, I could have sworn you were all in the same studio together, from the production stage to the mastering stage.
Wow, yeah. Well, the most important aspect of having everything fall into the same pocket is the click track, and how it's built. How is that building built? The drums have to be perfect, meaning they have to be right where you want them, and then you build the house on top of that. I actually, believe it or not, I recorded my parts, so all the vocal parts, I recorded it with no bass. So I recorded over guitars, keyboards, and drums, the whole record except for one song. And it's just because Germany was locked down. They couldn't go anywhere. And I snuck. I wasn't supposed to go anywhere. And my parts took longer than the bass lines. And I knew they would take longer because I had like 30 to 40 tracks of vocals for each song, pretty much. So I had to get working. So that's why I snuck out and snuck into the studio and worked it out. So just so I wouldn't fall behind. I didn't want to rush anything. I wanted it to be, just naturally executed. But, it was just mind-boggling where, you're locked down and you can only do so much. I still got what I needed to get done. And I just wanted to mention real quick, you mentioned just earlier on, I forgot to mention it. You mentioned that this is a three-part trilogy. I just wanted to point out, a lot of interviewers that they say the same thing, and to a lot of people that's how they interpret it, but it's actually one story. Let me take the three records, Sweet Hollow, Man of the Seven Gables, and Return to Hemmersmoor, and you put all three of them together, it's a single story. It's just three different parts of a single story. And each one of the records have been designed where it has a definite beginning and a definite ending, okay? And they can stand on their own as albums. But when you put them together and you listen to the ending of the first album and the beginning of the second album, it's the same moments in time, except it's seen from a different perspective. And the same thing applies between the ending of the second album and the beginning of the third album, Return to Hemmersmoor, which is coming out tomorrow. Same concept. It's a different perspective at a same moment in time of a single story. Just a different perspective, and that's how it's tied. That's how the third album was tied into the second, how the second's tied into the first. It's one continuous story. It's the trials and tribulations of K.K. Fossor. It's his saga. That's really what this is about. How does he live with all of the pain and suffering that haunts him on a day-to-day basis? There's a reason why he's this grouchy old man, and he's like, he's branded by townspeople of Hemmersmoor originally, back in the beginning of Sweet Hollow, for trying to save his daughter, his infant daughter that died. He's tried to resurrect her because he's a grave digger by trade, and he's a warlock by faith. So he tried to resurrect her. The townspeople, they weren't going to have that at that time, during that time period. They put him on a trial. They destroyed his wife and his other daughter, his older daughter, Miranda, and his wife, Alyssa, and they burned him alive at a stake. While he watched, they forced him to watch it. And he did resurrect his baby in the beginning of Sweet Hollow. He was successful. They destroyed the baby because they didn't understand, and they judged him so quickly without knowing what was making him, do the things that he was doing. So they branded him. Ultimately, they branded him with the mark of evil for his sins, for the crimes that he committed, for the evil sins that he committed, and they let him live so he could carry the sins of his family for the remaining days of to walk on earth, while the rest of his family were destroyed. And that's pretty much why he looks like he's pissed. He's not a happy guy, and he's constantly haunted by the deaths of his family, and he has to try to do some good in the midst of all this. But he manages to be, not much different than like Ash from Evil Dead, like the real anti-hero. He's like an anti-hero. He will in some moments he might have to kill someone to do something good beyond that. And it's a very interesting. So he's not really an evil guy. He's not really a really good guy, but he's not a bad person. He does what he does to try to do the right thing, but sometimes he does bad things. But he's not an evil person, and he looks like an evil person. So I hope I clarified all of that for you.
Oh, absolutely. And that actually answered a lot of questions that I did have about thematically what's going on here with Return to Hemmersmoor as well, too. Just being able to see how that does continue on with the story. I mean, especially with being able to enjoy the perspectives of the last two albums. I mean, I really love that, being able to see this continue on in all of these different parts, and just being able to see the character development that's going on and the world around him. I mean, it's just incredible the work that you've accomplished here.
Well, I really appreciate that. That's really nice to say that. It was definitely very interesting to try to continue the story with in this fashion, because you have he's haunted by the deaths of his family, and he misses them. He wants them back. He wants to feel whole again. He's not whole. He's just incomplete. And he's walking this earth almost like a zombie. He's incomplete. And he has an assistant by his side from the very first record. He had an assistant. And on the first record, at the end of the first record, there was a family, or I should say, on the first record, there was a family, the Hawthorns, that moved into the town that Sweet Hollow Cemetery was part of, okay? And what happened was KK had come from Hemmersmoor, okay, after he dealt with all of his the deaths, and he was branded, and he fled, okay? So he fled, he came across the ocean, and he fled to a town on Long Island, New York, and he became the caretaker of Sweet Hollow Cemetery. So this family moves in, the Hawthorns, and they move right down the road, and he befriends the children, because the children don't see him as a monster like other people. Because if you've seen a guy with an inverted cross burned onto his face, you would view him as a monster. But the children didn't view him that way. He took a liking to the girl. Her name was Mary Hawthorne. And he warned the children not to be in the cemetery because he felt this evil presence. Well, ultimately, the children didn't listen to him, and ultimately, Mary became possessed. Mary Hawthorne, who resembled his daughter, Miranda, became possessed with a spirit called the Crimson Corpse. Okay? The Crimson Corpse wanted her human form, and he was a spirit that was trapped in the cemetery for like 200 years, a long time. So ultimately, Mary, who's possessed, goes back to the house, goes back to her home, and she winds up murdering her entire family, except for the grandmother. The grandmother always locked her door at night, okay? That's one of the reasons why people lock their doors. So she was actually agile enough. She wasn't this frail old lady. She was an agile woman, strong woman, and she apprehended her possessed daughter and took her granddaughter, to cemetery, because that's where she knew KK, and she heard the townspeople say that he had some kind of powers, and she sought his help and his assistance, and he said, we have to exorcise her. So he exorcises the demon, the spirit, okay? But the only way to really save her soul, right, which he didn't tell, and this is where it kind of like it crosses the line a little bit. He had to kill the girl's body, to thwart the efforts of the Crimson Corpse to becoming a permanent fixture in our reality. So he did that. The grandmother had died. During a scuffle while the exorcism was going on, she was knocked over. She hit her head on a stone, and she died. She just died. But he sacrificed Mary. He saved her soul. Him and Remsen, his assistant, they fled. They fled the scene. The townspeople chased them down. They chased them, and they fled to Manor of the Seven Gables, which was a coven that was run by all these witches that he was aware of, and they took refuge there. And little did they know, the townspeople of Sweet Hollow contracted Peter Thompson, the last known witch hunter who hailed from England, to track down KK and either bring him to justice or lay him right there where he stood. So Peter Thompson went hunting for KK and caught up with him at the manor. And as he was surrounding him and his men surrounding the manor to apprehend KK and bring him to justice, KK instructed Remsen to leave. Now this is some time between the events that ended at Sweet Hollow and where we were in Manor of the Seven Gables part of the story. He instructed Remsen to flee through the secret stairs and go and continue the second part of our plan. The listener doesn't know what the first, second, third, what were the parts, Second part continued on a 7-inch back in the garden where Death sleeps. It was a 7-inch containing 2 singles. That's where Remsen goes back to Sweet Hollow, now unearths the body of Mary Hawthorne to bring her back. Okay? KK is now apprehended at this point by Peter Thompson. Peter Thompson is not aware that Remsen even exists because he fled through the secret stairs, right? And he apprehends KK. He apprehends the woman who took KK and Remsen in initially, called, her name was Sarah, the scullery maid. And he basically put them on trial, and destroyed any other inhabitants of the coven or the manor, and he burned down the manor. And before KK was to meet his maker, he tied him to a stake, and he also killed Sarah, Peter Thompson. And he told KK, he said, listen, you're about to go, but before you go, I just want to let you know, it was I who killed your wife and daughter back in the Hemmersmoor trials. And KK was just devastated. That just conjured up all these haunting feelings, to the pinnacle of where he just broke down. He just broke down. He just shut off. It was over for him. And Peter Thompson was saying this, he was just like heckling him. He was just like, and mocking him and putting him down and condescending, and you're going to go meet them. Say hello to your family for me. And he lights KK on fire. And that's how Matter of Seven Gables ends. But you don't know, there was some time that transpired between KK being apprehended and Sarah being apprehended and they going on trial. There was a certain amount of time that transpired, which was enough time for Remsen to go complete the second part of the plan and bring the body of Mary Hawthorne back. So the third part of the story, Return to Hemmersmoor, you have Remsen arriving in the beginning with the body of Mary Hawthorne, right? And he was supposed to meet his master in the town square, and he doesn't see him, but he sees a man tied up at the stake, and that other man is going to light him on fire. It's a different perspective of Matter of the Seven Gables ending. And what does he do? He ties a rope to one end of the water tower that they had there, this huge water tower for the whole town, and he tied another end to the carriage, the horse-drawn carriage he rode in on, and he cracked the whip. The horse pulled the leg out, knocked the water. The water washed all the men away, extinguished the fire that started to burn KK, and washed Peter Thompson and his men away, just giving him enough time to free KK and flee. KK at first didn't want to flee. He's defeated. He just learned that, Peter Thompson was the one who killed his family, and there's no reason, he's done. And Remsen reminded him that there is reason to continue, because I have Mary's body. We have to go back to continue the third part of the plan, which was to resurrect Miranda's soul spirit into the body of Mary Hawthorne. And that they do that in the Field of Immortality, the later part of the album, and they are successful, but something doesn't seem right. Something's a little off with her. What is off? Can't pinpoint it. Well, in Maestro's Last Stand, the last song, he realizes it's not her, it's the Crimson Corpse that actually manipulated him into thinking that it was Miranda. And he sucks KK into the ground, and KK's gone. Now, moments before that, right when Miranda's spirit was resurrected into Harry's body, Peter Thompson and his men, they weren't giving up. They came and they went looking for KK, and they come across the ending of the ceremony. And again, Peter Thompson says to KK, "You're not going to get away this time. On my marks, men. Ready, aim. We're gonna. You're dying. Goodbye. That's it. Done. We caught up with you. We're going to kill you." And he just said, "Wait, do you remember when I told you back in Salem that the next time our paths cross, I would rip your heart out?" Because he says that in the song Punishment by Fire. And Peter Thompson laughed, and he says, yeah, I remember. And he said, "Well, I lied." And when he lied, what he meant by that was Peter Thompson didn't see it, but his newly resurrected Miranda rips his heart out from behind him. She thrusted her hand into his back, through his cage, and ripped out his heart. And he just died. And, he was happy she did that, but now let's go home and, continue our happy family. And, something was just off, but for the duration of the remaining part of the record, he started seeing things that just didn't seem right. And in Maestro's Last Stand, that's when he realized. And at that moment, when he's getting sucked into the ground, Remsen yells out to him, Master, and KK yells back to him, don't forget your bloodline. Don't forget your bloodline. And that's it. So what does that mean? Don't forget your bloodline. It can be interpreted many different ways. But you have to find out. Maybe in a future release. Who knows?
Absolutely incredible. And I was so curious about the ending because I had a feeling it was something like that, but obviously just being able to listen to everything, listening to what was going on with the music, there's a little bit of room for interpretation until you know the whole thing, but knowing that ending behind it, just being able to see those switches that are happening and, potentially what could happen in the future, I'm so excited to see where the band can go from this point forward because it is what seems like such a great finale, but now knowing that everything that could happen in the future, it's just got me so excited.
Well, there's actually, it could, remember, each album is created where it could be over at that point. Because if you listen to each album independently and not know about the others, it could be over, or it can continue. So what I'm saying is, it is possible that a storyline can continue. I don't know if it would be with KK or not, but, the time would tell. But that's the possibility that it could be this continuous thematic concept that continues. And, it's just one a part of an adventure, and then there's a different part of an adventure. And it's the trial and tribulations of what one experiences throughout their life. You can look at it like that.
Yeah, it is really a great way to do that. And, with that too, obviously with people in general, I mean, there's so many positives and negatives that go into it, whether you're a good person or a bad person, or you are just a person. There's so many takeaways that you can take from that. And, it's so great to be able to see that explored here too, because people just aren't black or white. I mean, there's so many different kinds of gray that can go into there. And then when you have like an anti-hero like KK Fossor like that, I just love the way that this has turned out so far. I mean, it's just incredible storytelling from the beginning to all the way now. And of course, with the Return to Hemmersmoor coming out tomorrow, I can't wait for people to be able to check this out. And now knowing where everything is led up to, it's just going to be so exciting for me to be able to go back and listen to all 3 albums in a row and just really dissect the story even more. And I thank you so much for taking the time to be able to explain everything about what was going on with the story and, possibly what to look forward to in the future as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on to have this nice discussion, and we can't, as a group, we can't wait to get back out there and play, and hopefully it's sooner than later. It'd be great. It would be great.
Oh, totally. And yeah, again with that, I thank you so much for taking the time to do this. And of course, the new album Return to Hemmersmoor coming out tomorrow, October 30th. Absolutely, I hope everyone goes and checks it out and checks out the previous releases to really understand the concepts and the thematics and everything that's going on within these albums. And again, I thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I was so glad we were able to talk again and talk about this amazing album.
I thank you again, Josh. Thank you so much for having me on, and the band thanks you, and we're just very happy to be able to to create some art and music that people really enjoy. And if anybody out there that's listening and they want something that they could really sink their teeth into, I suggest getting the actual Gatefold album, because how many you can smell it and touch it and see the unbelievable artwork. That's what I used to do when I was a kid, when I used to buy some of my favorite records, especially Gatefolds. You open them up, and what's the first thing you do? You smell it. I don't know. You smell them, and you admire the artwork. And Mario Lopez, who drew the art for this album, is just phenomenal. He did the last one as well, now the Seven Gables. But Return to Hemmersmoor, there's little Easter eggs in the artwork as well. I won't say where, but there's a few Easter eggs, so I would take a look at it closely.
Oh, that is so cool. And yeah, I mean, when I get the chance to be able to check this out in the physical Gatefold form, I'm definitely going to be looking for that as well, too. And yeah, again, I do appreciate you taking the time to do this and being able to talk again. I mean, obviously with the times in 2020 being so turbulent, it's great to see that everything that you were able to accomplish here. I can't wait to see what the fans think starting in a few hours now, being able to check out this album. And you taking the time to be able to take this rest day and be able to talk.
Yeah, again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I hope you stay safe and enjoy your Halloween, and everybody enjoy Halloween as best as you can.